this is Cheri at djsundry.blogspot.com, and I am in full Christmas card making mode. Now, typically I make quite a few Christmas cards, anywhere from 75 to 100 or even more. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it with that many this year, but I'm at least going to make a few. So the paper that I chose is this North Pole Gazette paper. And this is from the Recollections, and this is a 2018 paper pad, and I just love it. Now, of course, as with anything, there are a couple papers in here that I don't love as much, but I really like the red and the black and the white. You see some of this right here, which actually we'll be using in the card. I liked it so much I even bought it in 6x6. So this is a new paper pad, and I'm going to set that aside because everything else that I have here I pulled out of my stash. So I have some glitter paper. Now this says it's in a bag from Close to My Heart. This paper in this bag is not from Close to My Heart. They're just individual sheets that I picked up somewhere. I have some silver, I have some gold, all in the same bag. This is Close to My Heart, and it is white. And so I pulled that out because I needed that. I had some black 8.5 by 11 cardstock that I'm using. And then that's it for the paper supplies. Moving on to the tools, I'm using two different stamp sets. The first stamp set is Hymns of Praise Holiday from Close to My Heart. And I'm just going to set that aside. The second one is a stamp set that I don't think I had ever used before. It's called Yuletide Carol, and this is actually several years old. I don't believe that either of these are probably still available. Maybe the other one is, but this one is not unless it made a comeback. But I wanted to use that, and I'm just going to set it aside for a minute. We'll get back to that because one of my quick tips for this video is from that stamp set. I have black ink, I have Versamark ink, I have, as far as tools go, I have my embossing gun that I used. I have my embossing pillow, and this is interesting because I hadn't seen one of these in a while, and I guess it's just because I hadn't looked, and I figured that mine was so old it was just an old-fashioned way of doing things. But I was in, I believe it was Michael's the other day, and they actually had one of these near the embossing powder. So if you don't have one of these and you're going to be embossing with embossing powders, I highly recommend that you get it, because what it does is it helps remove the static from your paper so that you don't have embossing powder being statically adhered and not just adhered by ink. So you just wipe it over the piece before. And I did pre-prep all of my stamping and all of my embossing just for the sake of time. So I just wanted you to know that. I do have this Ranger embossing powder in silver, and I have a really old embossing powder, I'm not even sure what brand it is, in gold. And I have to tell you, I think after using this that it's old enough that it's probably time for me to just toss this one and start fresh, because I didn't feel like it melted smoothly. I felt like it was kind of grainy. So I think it's time for that one to be discarded. I also used white, which I don't know the brand of it. I keep my white in a container, and it's getting low. I'm going to have to replace it. But I keep my white and my clear in containers like this. There's quite a bit of clear in here, but in my white container it's almost empty, so I have no idea what brand it is. I did use my Xyron. This is the old 250, and it was perfect for the die cut that I used. And then I used this old Tim Holtz Reindeer Flight Sizzix die. So let's get going straight into the card. And like I said, I have prepped a lot of the card work in advance, and I have a couple of quick tips I want to share with you while I'm doing it. But basically what I just have is a white A4 card base. So it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And actually it's folded in half. And then I went ahead and I prepped the inside, and I just took a piece of black cardstock and adhered that. Now the size of that, I just wanted just the smallest margin around because I really want to emphasize the black and the white. So I have the white base with the black matte, and the matte on this is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and that's actually going to be the mat size of the front of the card as well. And then I just went in 1/4 of an inch from that to make my white mat, and I stamped my sentiment in black: a silent night, a star above, a blessed gift of hope and love. So that's the inside. That's all I did to it. There'll be room for me to, you know, write a quick greeting and their name and sign it just like you would in a normal Christmas card. So now we're going to go with our outside mat. And so I'm going to just grab my ATG guide here, or gun here, and go ahead and adhere that. Now, it seems to me like it's personally a little bit more difficult to get things straight when you have the narrower margin, because you have so little room to move, and you don't see a lot of the border around it. So I just do the best that I can. Now on the white table it's probably difficult to see as well, but there we have that. And isn't that such a pretty black and white paper? Now the next thing that I did is I cut the card base. Now this is my first quick tip that I want to share with you. I took one sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock, and typically when you're using A4 size, you can get 4 bases or whatever out of one piece of 8.5 by 11. But when you are using, when you're matting as small as this mat is, and let's just grab a ruler so I can tell you exactly what size, because I forgot to write it down. But I did this at 4 3/4 wide by 3.5 inch tall, and I was able to get 5 of them out of a piece of paper. And how I did that is I started with my first cut. I did the 4 3/4 right here, so like this would be 4 3/4, and I cut this way. And because of that, then I was able to get 1, 2, and 3 pieces, and then the piece out of the side, it ended up being exactly the 3.5 inches wide, and so then I was able to get 2 more pieces, and that way I was able to get 5 pieces out of this, which was perfect because I was making 10 cards, and I'll show you all those at the end. So the next thing that I did, or the next thing that I would do in this case, would be emboss my sentiment. Now I always do that on the blank piece of paper before I adhere it down. And the reason why is if you make a mistake or something and it's adhered, chances are you risk tearing up your card base, and you don't want to do that if you have to remove it. So this way, if I make a mistake, I can either flip it over and do it on the other side, or I can just toss it and start over, but I haven't ruined my whole card base. So that's another tip that I would use. And then my final tip is how I did this stamp. Now this stamp set is, this is the Yuletide Carol stamp set, and when I saw this stamp right here, it has, you can't really see it, but it has Merry Christmas in the middle of that tag. Now when I first touched it, I thought it was separate, but when I went to pull the Merry Christmas out, I realized it wasn't. So what did I do? I grabbed a scissor and I cut around that. So now I have a blank tag that I can use anytime I want. Then I was also able to have my Merry Christmas, because that was the one that I felt meant my, felt really worked well with my card that I was making. I just liked the font and the size and everything on that card. So now I didn't hurt anything. I just cut the middle out of that. That was all negative space anyway, and so it definitely didn't hurt anything, and I can get more use out of my stamp. So that's the other quick tip. So then the last thing that I did is I used the glittery paper, and I cut the reindeer in flight, or the reindeer flight from Tim Holtz out of it. Now this one I did in silver, and when I show you at the end, all of the insides are the same, but you'll notice that the outsides are a little bit different. I forgot to adhere this. So the next thing that I would do is I would go ahead and adhere this right on the top. Now I thought that this would be kind of fun, and I thought it would be nice to maybe put some red ribbon in here or something, just to give it that extra pop of color. And maybe if I was going to make more, I would, but I decided for these I just want the simple black and white with the gold and silver accents on some of them. But other than that, there's no traditional color in it. So now I ran these guys through the die cut. The reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure that my legs, they're so thin in there, I wanted to make sure that they adhered really well, but I didn't want to get wet glue out and risk it squeezing out and then waiting for it to dry. So this is just kind of a shortcut that I've used. And that fills up the whole base of the card just like that. So just a simple Christmas card, but it's so pretty. I remember when I was a kid, when we would get Christmas cards from different people that had embossing on it, and of course that was before I knew anything about card making and those kind of things. I thought those were my favorite cards. Those and the flock cards were my favorite cards. So I just love that embossing. So I am so happy to be able to make those for my loved ones. So this is the first one with the kind of pine cone evergreen background. This is another one, again from that same card, or from that same paper pack. This one's in gold, and it was just a polka dot paper. Here's another one in silver in the polka dot paper. Now in the die, the reason why you have two different types here is because in the die itself, it cuts both of them at a time. And so this one, I had originally planned to turn it this way, which you'll see I've done that with other ones, but I actually made a mistake and I had already stamped the inside this way, and I figured there was no sense wasting it, and it still looks good that way. So there's that one. And then this one in white is really pretty as well with the polka dots. And this one in white with the evergreen in white behind it. Another gold one with polka dots. And then we move to, I'm going to set these aside, we move to the ones that I did do in the other direction. So I did 2 silver in the other direction, and the reason I did that is because my base paper, again, well, first of all, I think the deer looks better, the tall deer looks better on this a little bit, but also the paper below it was very much going in one direction. The reason it was, I know you can cut it in any direction, but I was actually using up scraps from another project, so each of these pieces of paper were only about this wide, so I could only go one way, and I didn't have quite enough room to get the other direction for that particular paper with the words on it. But so we had those 2 silver and those 2 in white. So just a simple Christmas project. It didn't take me a lot of time to do these once I figured out exactly what I was doing, and I have 10 cards ready to go. So thanks so much for stopping by today, and remember, take some time to enjoy the little things. Have a great day. Bye.